you very much. Yeah. Very good evening to one and all present here. After more than 3 decades, India has a new national educational policy, and it seems quite radical. Among the changes are a new school structure, vocational education from the age of 12, 4-year degrees, flexible exam systems, change in higher education, due thrust on research, a merger of UGC and AICTE, and so on. This is a time for transformation and drastic changes everywhere, and we need to take another look at everything we do. Transforming and creating a dynamic education system is fundamental for the progress of any country. Education cannot be in watertight compartments anymore. There needs to be diversity because today's world is a world full of opportunities. Jiddu Krishnamurthy once said, education in the true sense is helping the individual to be mature and free, to flower greatly in love and goodness. That is what we should be interested in and not in shaping the child according to some idealistic pattern. The critical character of NEP 2020 is its flexibility and its goal towards progression, which allows the learner to have the freedom to choose and to grow without interruption. The colorful Mobius strip in the draft of NEP 2019, in which ma'am was also a part of, symbolizes the perpetual developing and living nature of education, that which has no beginning and which has no end. Let's walk together to embrace the challenges and turn it into opportunities. Today, for the second keynote session of this virtual international conference, we have an erudite personality with us, Dr. Leena Chandran Wadia, Chief Consultant, Committee for Draft NEP 2019 and Member Drafting Committee NEP 2020. Dr. Leena at present serves as a Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, Mumbai. She has received her PhD in Physics from the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, and did her postdoctoral work in high performance computing at ETH Zurich, Switzerland. She had been a researcher at several places in India and abroad, including IIT Bombay and CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research in Switzerland. She has also served in the corporate sector as senior VP and CTO at Netcore Solution Private Limited, a startup company in the area of mobile value added services. Since moving to ORF Mumbai in 2010, Dr. Leena has been engaged in research and policy advocacy, primarily in education, also in other areas such as renewable energy, public health, and sustainable agriculture. She has contributed to the preparation of India's draft National Education Policy 2019 as a member of the Technical Secretariat at the Dr. Kasturi Committee, as well as a member of the drafting committee of the policy. Dear ma'am, we feel so privileged to have you here, and we are looking forward to your presentation. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much for that wonderful preamble. It was very, very nice and very inspiring. Thank you also to Dr. Aloysius for inviting me to speak at this forum and on this topic. Professional and vocational education is not discussed very often. And so I'm kind of happy to take a shot at it. I'm going to share my presentation and then begin right away. Let's just see. Can you confirm that you can see the
Yes,
presentation?
yes, ma'am.
Yes. Okay, so let's begin. So everybody, Rishi also talked about the Mobius strip this morning. The Mobius strip was something Dr. Kasturi Rangan was very clear about. This is what symbolizes education. There's no beginning, there is no end. And I want that to be the symbol. And then the people at Azim Premji created this very beautiful looking Mobius strip and also gave us a template for presentation, which most of us have been using ever since. I think you must have seen it even in Rishi's presentation. Okay, so let's just take both Professor Sharma in this morning and Rishi also talked about all the things about NEP and higher education and the challenges in higher education. But I want to just quickly run through some of the things that are important for this talk. So, if you look at higher education today, the first thing that strikes you is the mad rush for preparation for admission to a few institutions in this country, whether it is Delhi University colleges, which have a cutoff of 100%, or it is the IITs, or it is medicine and IITs for engineering, and then medical colleges for medicine. That's the rush. So higher education today is characterized by very small quantity of very high quality education. And this means that everybody is in tuition starting middle school, and the stress is destroying all our children. And then, of course, you have institutions like Baiju and Anna Academy, and I don't know how many others who've become unicorns and decacons, just leveraging on this fear of parents of lack of future. This is what we have to change. All of us who are present at this talk today and everybody outside, we need to change this. We have to make more high quality available. Government has failed, central government has failed spectacularly. Their regulatory framework didn't succeed in doing anything good with education at all. I don't have to say more. State governments have failed. They have failed to support their own universities. There is weak governance, there's poor financing, there is not enough accountability. And of course, there are cultural issues that we don't seem to want to address at all, including this terrible bugbear that we're carrying with us for thousands of years called caste, which has no basis at all. And then, teaching profession, is I don't have to tell you, there are many people in this audience who know it very intimately, that it's a very hard problem to solve because too many people work on contracts and very poor preparation teachers have. There is a very strong presence of private sector, very skewed towards private sector, but then the quality is varying, and this impacts equity also because there is very low GER, and if private sector is going to charge high fees, then it's cutting out a lot of people from opportunities. And of course, the pandemic has shown us that there is the neglect of investment in technology is costing us very dearly. So let's start by looking at the India Skills Report 2020, which brings us employability data. Let me see if I can put this down one sec. No, okay. Part of my screen is covered, so I was just wondering whether I can change that a little bit. I can minimize this, I think. Yeah, okay. The India Skills Report, if you take a look at it, you'll see that there are certain trends. But I think the most important carry home is that less than 50% of every single undergraduate degree that we have seems to be, 50% of the graduates seem to be employable. This is not a thing that we should be really happy about, isn't it? What happened? Yeah. Okay, so what the approach of the NEP has been, as Matthew said, flexible and integrated. There's a lot of flexibility, regulatory reforms you heard of this morning. You heard from Rishi, principle of separation of powers and minimal regulation, autonomy to higher education institutions based on their accreditation scores. And this is meant to empower faculty members, phase out affiliation, because affiliation breeds a kind of dependency relationship, which is very, very, bad for quality. And of course, consolidation of institutions we want. You see, it's not, students don't only learn from teachers, they learn from each other, and we need thousands of students to be talking to each other. In fact, preferentially in residential environments, so that they learn from each other. But that's not happening in India at all. And of course, the focus on a broad-based liberal education, I don't have to say the importance of something like that. And of the new 4-year undergraduate degree, which will include research options and direct admissions to PhD. And of course, the topic for today's seminar, which is the integration of professional and vocational education, which has lots of challenges. We'll talk about it. And then, of course, Rishi mentioned the promotion of, I think even Professor Sharma mentioned, promotion of research and new knowledge generation through National Research Foundation. And of course, provisions for equity. When the policy came out, we got a lot of flack saying that we haven't paid attention to equity, but that's not true at all, because we have equity can be addressed in many different ways, and equity is not just for tribals and scheduled castes and minorities, the traditional quotas that we talk about. In school, for example, there are orphans, there are migrant children, their geography is a tremendous limitation. People who live near forests or who live in very hilly areas don't have access. And so there are many other kinds of disadvantage. And this is what Professor Sharma was talking about, how NEP has used socially and economically disadvantaged groups as a group, which came in for criticism, but it really means something that we want every child addressed. And the creation of special education zones, you must have seen it in the newspaper today that Karnataka has sort of the committee that Rishi was part of has recommended creating special education zones, new research and education universities, gender inclusion fund, and lots more of that kind of thing. So I thought that since I was also privileged to be part of the draft NEP drafting committee, I'll share with you a few quick thinking about what were the principles used to arrive at the draft NEP. I'll just run through it very quickly. I don't want to waste too much time. But of course, the focus was in the school sector, the focus was on strengthening government schools and colleges, because without strengthening, and colleges too, so higher education also, without strengthening government institutions, there is no way we can ensure equity, And then, in school, we have committed, and in fact, the NEP 2020 says it also, the government has committed to universalization of education until 18. So this is a very good move. We hope it will be implemented. We have to remain vigilant to make sure that it is implemented. And then we have not tampered with the existing principles of reservation. Dr. Kasurirangan was very clear about that. That's not the ambit of the education policy. What is the ambit of the education policy is to make sure that every student gets a good quality education. And that is what we've tried to do. And also for education to try and mitigate and remove the scourge of divisiveness based on caste and religion and gender and disabilities and so on. The policy also does not interfere with the role of state governments at all. The Constitution placed state education in charge of state governments, and only maintenance of quality in charge of higher, central government, and that equation is not disturbed. The policy, like I mentioned earlier, has a very sharp focus on disadvantaged students, and it has also made use of the most recent research on how children learn in order to formulate policy. And this slide I will not say much about, except to say that we were asked to come up with an NEP that was aligned with India's overall development goals, which was about becoming a knowledge economy and of developing sustainably and equitably. And they also told us that this policy must have a long-term horizon. So we've tried to do that. And the beginning of that is to keep the focus squarely on teachers and faculty, school teachers and faculty. I'm using the word faculty members as a general way to address faculty teachers in higher education. And it seeks to empower managements of institution, which includes private sector. Don't forget, private sector is the largest part of higher education. And it actively nurtures research and supports private sector efforts, pays adequate attention to internationalization, creates a new regulatory framework, and also it tries to ensure mechanisms to ensure successful policy implementations. Policy implementations can often have unexpected consequences and unintended consequences. So if you don't have some people who are gathering data and looking at what is happening and revising the policy as needed, policy can go very wrong. So that was the a rather long sort of background in which I want to come back to professional education. Now, as you all know, in India, when we talk about professional education, we are talking about technical education, mostly engineering, architecture, hotel management, many others, pharmacy, and so on. And we are talking about medicine and all related fields, nursing, dentistry, pharma, and so on. We're talking about agriculture and all related fields, horticulture, fisheries, dairy, all of that. And then we talk about law. But, amazingly enough, we don't include teacher education as a professional education, and we don't sort of treat teachers and teacher education in the same category. And this is something that is really something for all of us to think about. But what the policy has provided for is to say that so far professional education has always been separate. Medical colleges are on their own, many engineering colleges are on their own, law colleges and universities are on their own, agriculture universities you don't ever meet anybody from. That has to change, but in order to work that out, we need review committees that will figure it out, because there is in today's world we know how much agriculture benefits from genetics and genomics and patent law and all kinds of things. So there is a lot of intermixing of disciplines that are needed to be, if you want to create new products, patents, and services in the in the economy. And so we need to make these disciplines come together, but the NEP is providing for some further look into how to do this, actually. Right? But the aim is that institutions that don't have professional education can start professional education, and the institutions that have professional education can start liberal education. That's the eventual aim. So, for example, IIT Kharagpur was waiting to start a medical college for I don't know how many years. So now they can maybe finally start it. So healthcare has some, special problems in that there is too short a supply of doctors and nurses and many different kinds of healthcare professionals, which is affecting our health. And we know that even more so during the pandemic. You read every day about how the frontline health workers are exhausted because there isn't enough people to relieve them. Similarly, undergraduate education in agriculture is simply unable to cope with the demand from industry for trained graduates. And this is very, very, very interesting. So agriculture needs to grow its capacity much more. And law has a very interesting problem. I just picked up one sort of main characteristics. So law has a very interesting problem in that, all the lower courts are in regional languages and the higher courts are in English. And, the translation work of case papers related to a particular case from regional language into English takes forever. And this is part of the reason for such extreme delays in courts. And, really, the students need a bilingual education. That's what I've said in this slide. So if you look at the professional and vocational education with some perspective, what you see is that these are the fields that actually focus on learning by doing. The practical component of the learning is very, very high, and they need to connect to local communities because their services are targeted at local communities. They also, help nurture research that leads to, like I said, product, patents, and services. So we'll come back to that in a minute. And of course, mainstreaming vocational education can also help and identify and nurture individual talent, because we know that children, verbal and mathematical abilities are not the only talents people have. Calisthenic abilities, ability to work with hands, all of that is all to be appreciated, whether it's dance or cooking or any of those things that you want to do, professions, they need to be trained for that. And today with so much of IT, the traditional separation of white collar workers working in air conditioned offices and blue collar workers working outside, those lines are blurring completely as technology takes over every possible field that we have. So there are a lot of jobs in vocational education, and not enough people to fill them. And we are in this strange situation in this country that so many young people are looking for jobs and industries looking for trained people, and the two cannot seem to meet. That's the story of vocational education as of today. Now, some concerns in professional education is the fact that professional councils, these are professional councils, are councils of practitioners, eminent doctors who used to be part of MCI, they are now part of National Medical Commission, or eminent lawyers who are part of Bar Council of India, who, their mandate was really to regulate the ethics of their professions and to mandate, how often should doctors get refresher training, or how often should lawyers get refresher training, what kind of refresher training, all of that. But they've ended up regulating higher education institutions. And the amazing thing is that this actually impinges on the autonomy of higher education institutions and all academics, but academics have not protested. They have sort of let this happen. And I find that that's not something we should continue to allow going ahead in the future. Similarly, too many regulators means that in a university there is UGC, but then if they are doing engineering teaching, then there is AICT, and then there is all the other councils. There are some 19 or 21 or God knows, 19 I think professional councils who regulate, and many of them many times have conflicting regulations. So higher education institutions have lots of difficulties. So yeah, before I've said what is there here, so I'll move on. And yeah, so here, this is what I want to emphasize on, that, these fields are related to contributions to the economy and to GDP. This morning, Rishi mentioned that, if we don't do research, we will not figure in international rankings. But there is an even more compelling reason to do research. And if you just look at this just the one blue bubble, what it says is that the American Physical Society estimated that just industrial physics contributed an estimated 12.6% of the US GDP in 2016, which was approximately $2.3 trillion, and generated an employment of 11.5 million jobs, which is 6% of total US employment. These are stunning figures. What it's telling you is that, so for example, we see it around us all the time, but we don't register. You go to a hospital, the sonography equipment, the PET scan equipment, all of them are all products of physics, engineering, harnessed to serve healthcare. And we just don't have the ability to do that. In fact, I was at a conference talk recently of IIT Delhi director who said that he had recently started collaborating with AIMS, and he found that all of a sudden they have some 150 ideas that they are working on. Now there's a talk tomorrow on National Research Foundation, and Rishi has mentioned it, so I'm going to move on. I'm not going to speak about it. So let's come to vocational education. Vocational education, I'll show you some graphs in a moment. This is just an overview. What I wanted to say was that the conception for vocational education is that at least 50% of all learners will have exposure to vocational education by 2025. It looks very ambitious, but it can be achieved, and I'll show you how. And then it must become part of the larger vision of liberal education. Colleges should introduce vocational education, and students must be able to choose a few vocational subjects along with their other subjects of choice. And for that, some qualification frameworks will have to be worked out. The NSQF already exists. We need to create the National Higher Education Qualification Framework, which will actually specify graduate attributes. What do you expect a graduate to from this so-and-so course to be able to do? And if you do that, then with those qualification frameworks, faculty in educational institutions will be able to design curriculum. And
So we've said that there should also be a committee to oversee the integration of vocational education. I'm not sure whether it's already been set up by Ministry of Education. We'll have to see. So, pathways into higher education. So vocational education is also getting integrated into schools. NCERT and PSS CIV are already, creating curriculum. For those who know it, Samagra Shiksha has a lot of vocational education in it. There are nearly 18,000 schools which are running vocational education. So, but the problem today is that these students don't have pathways into higher education. But pathways into higher education could also mean the need for bridge courses and so on. So there is a lot of work to be done to integrate vocational education. We also need a method for creating curriculum, good quality curriculum for BVOC courses in various sectors of the economy. I'll talk to you about the School of Vocational Education model that was developed at TIS, which has done a brilliant job. And of course, no advanced programs exist for the preparation of teachers for teaching vocational education. And not even at the skills universities, there is no courses at the master's and PhD levels, which is something that also we need to work on. And research we've already mentioned. Now take a look at these numbers. It's really very, very interesting. This is from the periodic labor force survey that came out in 2020, data gathered in, I think, 2017-18. Or 18-19, I can't be sure, I've forgotten, I'm sorry. So this is the labor force in the age group 15 to 59. The labor force is 452 million people strong. The female participation rate is just 26%, 27 if you want to correct it. And there's a McKinsey report which says that if you can increase female participation by just 10%, the GDP can increase by over US dollar 550 billion by 2025, just by increasing female participation. But here's the concern. Take a look at this pie chart. What this is telling you is that if you look at this 452 million people and look at the training they have, I'm sorry, the biggest chunk, which is the maroon one, is of not trained people. If you were a policy planner, you would worry a lot that 80% of the workforce has no formal training. 3% has formal training, and some 15-16% has informal training. What does informal or non-formal training mean? Many of them are learned hereditary. So we know all our beautiful arts and handicrafts and so on, children learn from their parents and so on. Then there is a lot of learning on the job that goes on. This is learning on the job. This is, I don't know what happened to I'm so sorry. I think the markers got rubbed out. Yeah. So this is self-learning, and then the light yellow is self-learning, and the maroon one is sort of learning from other sources. So mainly people either learn on the job, or they learn from their parents, or join the family businesses. But this is scary. No country should have this. Elsewhere in the world, South Korea has 96% of its workforce trained. And many other countries have different percentages. Germany has 75, and other countries have other numbers I cannot remember, but this is too small of people who are trained. So the other consideration for vocational and professional education is the sustainable development goals we used to talk about. It's not a goal anymore. It was accepted as an agenda in 2015. So it is a 2030 agenda for sustainable development. And India is committed to sustainable development, and India's success in achieving the goals will influence whether the world is able to achieve the goals or not, because of our large population. And so, let's take a look at where we are today. So it turns out that Niti Aayog actually maintains a dashboard of progress of various states in the sustainable development goals. And you just have to take a look at this to see that SDG 5, which is basically gender equality, we are doing very, very badly. And we must have fallen back a lot on poverty, hunger, health, and 4 is education. So let's take another look at this. So you see a lot of reds, which is sort of poor scores. Blue is 100%. um, Green is okay. So if you see a lot of uh, reds in these columns, and these must have gotten much worse during the pandemic. So, but I would say, it's, for me, it was very interesting to know that this is being measured at all, and that there are so many areas where young people can be trained, whether it is clean water and sanitation, which is really to do with sustainable water management, or renewable energy or electric vehicles. These are exciting areas for young people to work with. They shouldn't be thought of as vocational education and therefore lower class, but our educational institutions need to take the lead. Similarly, climate change or life on water or life on land, these are very, very important, because India is especially vulnerable to climate change. I don't know if you know this, but we are vulnerable to everything: the rise of sea levels, the wayward monsoons, the melting of snow in above. So we have multiple sources of climate change that we are vulnerable to, and so India needs to be much more afraid than it is now. There's not enough conversation happening about this subject. Now, to go back to vocational education, I took the slide from one of the NSDC presentations that I had seen sometime. NSDC stands for the National Skill Development Corporation, and they are organizing skill training. So sector skills councils are joint government industry bodies that decide curriculum and also decide evaluation and train the trainers. So they have come up with some classifications of services and manufacturing sectors. So you can see automotive, or gems and jewelry, or furniture, or aviation. But this breakup of 37 sector skills council, there's one in agriculture. There are cross-functional sectors on green jobs, which has to do with renewable energy, electric vehicles, water, and so on. And then persons with disabilities. But otherwise, this is a much more fine-grained breakup of areas in sector skills council. I'm sorry about this picture. This is not a very inspiring picture. I think there are much better ones on the NSDC website. You can take a look. But basically, they have, this services sector is the largest part of the Indian economy, more than 50%, nearly 60%. So it includes, you hear a lot of talk about training in retail and beauty and wellness and tourism and hospitality and IT, ITES. But there are many others. BFSI, that is banking, finance, insurance, and so on. These are very fast growing areas. But actually, there is a move to sort of talk about vocational education as real vocational disciplines, but no international consensus has emerged about vocational disciplines. In 2005, there was a suggestion to come up with 12 vocational disciplines. So there are 6 here, and there's 6 on the next slide. So for example, agriculture, food, and nutrition has everything to do with agriculture and food, but also domestic economy. Similarly, leisure, travel, and tourism is a vocational, can be treated as a vocational discipline, and you can actually generate teacher training courses in these and do research and look after specific groups of industry in the economy. So education and culture includes not just child and youth care, but also nursing education, adult education, and so on. So there is a move towards it, but in India there is not even any talk towards it. That was 6, and these are the other 6. So yeah, I will not talk about it too much, because this was first suggested in 2005. Germany is using some 13 disciplines. They added a 13th one. We have to decide what we want to do about it. So now I'll go back to, I'm not sure how I'm doing for time. Yeah, but maybe 10 minutes. So I'll talk
time,
about a
yeah.
few successful models. Sorry?
You have time, ma'am. 15 more minutes
Okay,
you can
okay.
take.
So thank you for telling me that. So I will talk about a few successful models. Let me skip this slide. There's not. Let me just go to directly to the pictures I have of the model. So you see, there is a model in which TIS is actually working with colleges in various states, including Maharashtra, of course, but also I think Jharkhand and Rajasthan and so on. BA, BSc, BCom students, while they are doing their BA, BSc, BCom in the summer holidays, they take foundation courses in the first summer break, or and then take and do another course at the end of their second year, with which they can get a domain certificate. And at the end of third year, if they do one more course, then they get a diploma from TIS along with their bachelor's degree. So their bachelor's degree continues as normal. This is additional during which runs parallel. And what they have found is that the students have become very, very employable. And so the employers are rushing to pick up these kids. So there is field work and internships. And if you ask what is a foundation course, it's things like English communication, digital literacy, legal literacy, financial literacy, employability skills, all of that. And of course, they choose some domains like banking, hospital service management, travel and tourism, and so on. So this model in 6 years has over 20,000 students. Okay, that's one model. The other model is the School of Vocational Education, where what they did is that they recognized that they don't have the know-how to create vocational education courses. You want to create a vocational education course in dialysis technology, kidney dialysis. There are millions of Indians who have kidney problems, and dialysis units are cropping up everywhere. You need trained people to run those machines, but they also need to know something about health, because they need to know if the patient is sort of showing bad signs while they are during their dialysis and so on. So what TIS did is, TIS is an institution of social sciences. So what they did is that they invited companies or individuals to come and create courses. And then they invited industry to actually provide practical training to the students. And then they invited classroom partners, which can be colleges or any other people who have classroom partners, to deliver the theory part of the course, which TIS prepared. So TIS is running vocational education courses at 95 locations in the country with partners, so that all students can find apprenticeships locally, and then go to these places and take theory classes either in the evenings or weekends, and get a degree from TIS. And the vertical anchors prepare the course guides, the lecture notes for the students, and the handbooks for the teachers, and on the basis of which TIS trains teachers. This is an amazing model. What it has ended up doing is that if you look at the number of people at TIS who are running a 26,000 students as of 2019, in just 6 years, they reached 26,000 students. But they are managing it with an 81 member team inside TIS. And all the others are empaneled people outside. If you see, there are 1,200 trainers, 1,243 trainers, 1,000 industry partners, which includes, the Taj Hotels and Dr. Reddy's Labs and Tata Motors, and, so many very high-end Lupin and mobile phone assembly companies and so on, and some 270 partners, education partners, and content creation partners, 19 in the various sectors of the economy. And so you see, they started in 2014 with just 443 students, and this is where they went as of 2019. Okay, when I made this graph, I did a case study of them because I was just so amazed. During my NEP, I did that and showed it to Dr. Kasuri Rangan. So this is the graph: exponential growth, 4,000 in 2018, 6,000 in 2019. And these are the verticals in which TIS has, so they have, more than 30 BVOC courses, more than 30 PG diploma courses, all designed by experts in their field. So this is real innovation. Academics can really do this. And so I want to motivate you all to try and think of new things or replicate this kind of thing. Another model, which I happened to visit in February, just before the lockdown, February 20th or something, I was there, is the Dayalbagh Educational Institution. But that's a large university set in the middle of a thriving community. They do a lot of agriculture, they do a lot of agri-processing, they have lots of animals, so they have lots of cows, so they have a dairy, and then they have dairy products. So there is a BVOC related to animal husbandry. And because they have a dairy, they have BVOC related to dairy processing, and related to that, there is waste management. They also have students who make products from dairy, ice creams, sweets, all that. And then those students even learn how to do export, learn about export licenses, and do so. Everyone is learning on the job. So then they also have greenhouse technology and lots of BVOCs woven into. This is harder to do, of course, but large universities can do this. There is no difficulty like that. I'm just talking about 3 models that I came across in just 1.5 years during the NEP work. I'm sure many others exist, but I think we need to do this. And I think I will make these 2 my last slides, the next 2 slides. So, everything hinges on faculty. NEP actually puts the development of individual students as per their individual aspirations as the key goal of NEP. When you are in doubt, ask what is good for the student. That's the motto that we would like all educational institutions to adopt, because for too long we have done what we think is good for discipline, for student, what students should know, what they should be doing. That's not what we want. We want students to be guided through life by developing their own strengths. So if we do that, then the first thing that happens is that the spotlight comes on faculty. And this means that because we want the focus on development of character, skills, and competencies in students, learning through community connect, all this requires a lot of engagement of faculty and a wide range of pedagogies. You're not going to do classroom lecturing anymore. You're going to do a lot of projects and a lot of field work and various other kinds of things that will help train the students. So therefore, faculty and their training and their evaluation methods will all require an overhaul. And we will need to give credit to faculty for not just teaching, but and research, which we often talk about, but also contributions to administration, to consulting, to contributions to student well-being, and to society and country. And this is something that was done at College of Engineering, Pune. I've written the report, a case study of theirs in 2015, where that college has, I don't know, some 70 clubs or something like that. Everything from rowing to bird watching to astrophysics to their student center satellite. So faculty are supporting all those student clubs. So they get credit for that. And the College of Engineering Pune has worked out an evaluation scheme for their faculty, which gives all their students. And they said they're happy to share it so that everybody can look at it and decide what they want to do for themselves. But what is true is that institutions that don't invest in their faculty will fall behind over the years. And we were talking about whether closing educational institutions is an option. If for 10 years we were hoping to say, but we ended up saying 15, giving more time. But if in 10 to 15 years an institution cannot rise up and meet the quality of standards, then in the interests of the student, it must be shut down. This is true. So all institutions will need to start worrying about how do they provide quality education for their students. And of course, faculty, they must keep their responsibility on student learning and so on, but they must also help the institutions raise funding through consulting and also by doing things that benefit the local communities, so it's a give and take. And so I think that this is very, very important, and that give and take must be reflected in the institutional development plan. If you look at faculty today, what we see is that the initial preparation of teachers for higher education is very, very weak, because a lot of faculty, especially in professional education, are people who have completed their master's degree. Not all master's level courses carry research projects with them. So faculty come into educational institutions with no research experience themselves. This is already bad to start with. And of course, there is some requirement about PhDs at associate professor level. So something people do that. But, in professional education, it's really only the master's level. But even in PhD, we actually don't have teaching assistantships for them, or any exposure to teaching during their PhD, because they are in an institution for 3 to 5 years. I mean, 5 years typically. They should have learned how to teach. There should be some effort to train people on how to teach. Just because you did a course doesn't mean that you can go out and teach that course. Managing a classroom is something, I don't need to say that. To this audience, everybody knows it. So induction training is also, when a new faculty is hired in an institution, very few institutions I know of do any serious induction faculty training. And the quality of that training varies. So how is a teacher to equip himself or herself to train students then? So it's a system that is actually sort of baking in mediocrity, and we have to change that. So NEP has actually recommended that there should be a tenure system. Tenure system is borrowed from abroad, but it's a good system, because you want young faculty, as soon as they come into an institution, to work very hard to establish themselves, to learn from their seniors, to learn the culture of the institution, fit in, learn, figure out what is the unique contribution he or she can make. And then if by that time, and convince the management to give them tenure, by that time they have put in enough work to make them a good faculty member. I remember that I was at one of, in Bombay, I was at a meeting that Reliance had organized of Reliance people, because they were preparing for their, Reliance University. They had invited a delegation from Stanford, and one of the persons who came was the president of Stanford, a German guy called Gerhard Casper. He had just given up his presidency, but he was emeritus professor at Stanford. And he came, and I just happened to be talking to him in the lunch queue, and he said, I cannot understand how in India you guys give tenure to somebody who just walks in the door. You cannot, you have to make sure that that person is fits into the system, fits into the institution, brings bring something with them of value to the institution. So anyway, so that's one of the reasons why we did this. And yeah, I think I'll stop. And of course, there are many vocational education and research will create many new jobs and many new teaching opportunities. And we must leverage all that to give our children a fighting chance to live in a country, in a world that is full of climate change related problems and other strife. So if we don't prepare them today, who will actually? So I'll stop here. I have a few more slides, but it's not important.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Leena, for that wonderful presentation. And now it's time for questions, if any,
Shall
you
I
can
stop
ask.
sharing the screen? I think let me start by doing that. Huh?
Yeah, thank
Okay.
you. So you can ask questions. You can raise your hand. The host will be unmuting you, or you can paste your questions in the chat box. We can raise the questions to Dr. Leena. So it's time. You can ask questions. In the meantime, there is a link given in the description box. This is the attendance form for the first day of international conference. I encourage all the participants to fill in the attendance form as well. Is there anyone who would like to ask Dr. Leena a question? I think your presentation was comprehensive enough.
Ma'am,
Yeah.
Also, it's a
this,
topic that
yeah,
doesn't, only unless people from professional education are here,
yeah.
they may not have questions. Go ahead,
Ma'am,
Dr. But yeah.
ma'am, this professional education, medicine and law, both don't come under this particular NEP, no? Is
No,
that right?
so this is what Rishi mentioned in the morning, and this is
Yeah.
true that in the draft NEP, we had said that everything should be regulated by the
Not
Higher
under the,
Education Commission of India. That is the new regulator that is going to replace the UGC.
okay.
But both Ministry of Health and Ministry of Law have sort of so this happens again and again and again because they are very strong and powerful.
More
The National
powerful,
Medical
yeah.
Commission is very powerful,
Yeah.
but I think that there will be some influence of the NEP on them, in that we will be able to make sure that there is not conflicting regulations. So if you want to start medical college, you may still have to go to a national medical commission, but there may not be too many conflicting regulations to
Yeah.
for it to be a problem. Somebody said that it's actually this is such a strong government, they should not have allowed this the medical and the law education to go out, but they don't seem to have succeeded. But
Okay. So
but
even
it,
the
like I said,
institution,
the problem is the regulation.
so
Sorry,
the
you were
trust
saying
which is
something.
managing law college also, the same trust, when it comes under, the law comes under the current NEP, or law, it goes parallelly different program as such. Any
No.
clarity on
So
that?
what we were saying, so this is very important question. So let me try to answer it carefully. See, in all these professions, there is a lot of practical component and a lot of ethics issues.
Correct.
So we are saying that the professional councils can continue to do that. And we are saying that the professional councils can also set
Bar council and
graduate attributes, meaning qualification, what we do, academic standard setting. But we are saying don't allow the Bar Council to regulate a law college. The Vice Chancellor and the faculty of that law college should not be subservient to the Bar Council of India. That is the distinction we are trying to make. There is education and there is the practice. The practice, please go ahead and regulate as the professional council. As professionals, please say what you would like to see a graduate to have. And then it's up to the educational institutions to deliver on the type of graduates that should be produced. So this is the distinction.
Okay.
That might still go through, actually. Yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Leena. I haven't got any more questions. So
sir,
in that
any
case,
chat, any questions are there, sir? Chat.
Yeah,
no
comments also is
questions are
okay.
there.
Yeah.
Only comment on.
Okay, so can we all keep our videos on, so we will have a photo together,
Okay.
like a moment of happiness? Yeah, all good smiling faces together.
I think there aren't enough videos on, isn't it? Yeah. People are
They're
switching
coming
on.
one by one. They may be, taking a quick makeup thing. Okay, thank you all for keeping your videos on. Yeah, thank you. The click is made.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so yeah. So I would maintain that thanks are the highest form of thought, and that gratitude is happiness doubled by wonder. With that quote from G.K. Chesterton, and with happiness, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to Dr. Leena, Chandran, Wadia, on behalf of Kristu Jayanti College and the academic fraternity participating in this conference, for being the resource person for this session and for discussing the different dynamics of vocational, professional, and teacher education in India with self-validating quantitative data, for discussing the challenges in policy implementation, and for sharing your vision and the country's vision for the future of higher education in India. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank
you,
you.
ma'am. Thank
Thank
you.
you all for
So,
having me.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very
and
Thank you,
much.
ma'am.
Yeah.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
a note for the participants. Tomorrow's session will start at 10. You can log in by 9:45. Dr. Philip G. Lyde, Vice Provost, Trinity Western University, Canada, will be the resource person. And see you all tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Thank
Bye.
you.